Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared is more than just a show. It's more than just a few random videos put on the internet. It's flourished into this crazy community that are looking for answers and they won't stop at anything. It's the perfect example of what the internet has become. It's no longer just cat videos and people falling down, although there's still a lot of that. Some of them even have guns. It's become a seriously cool place for creative content that can be high quality, profitable, and meaningful. As a spotty, socially awkward 16-year-old, I made my very first video about Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, and it changed everything. And now as a spotty, awkward 19-year-old, I'm doing the same thing for the very last time. This is going to be an in-depth look at all of the episodes. I'm probably gonna miss some things, that's just how it works. This is my opinion, this is my analysis of each episode. With the conclusion, we'll be looking at the missing videos as well, the Kickstarter, which means this is going to be an incredibly long video. So you can click any of the thumbnails around me to go to the analysis that you want to see. If you're not a huge nerd like me, not interested in all the details, I recommend just skipping to the conclusion, but that's entirely up to you. There's a lot of content here. This is actually the final shot. There's been a lot of work done today and it's really cool. So yeah, skip to whatever you want. There are also timestamps in the description down below for mobile users. Click them. Whether you think my theories are wrong or right doesn't really matter. We're here to celebrate Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. Before we get started, let me add that the characters within the show experience all of the wipes and cuts and all of the other editorial aspects of the show in real time. So one minute they could be holding a phone and the next they're somewhere else completely different holding a sandwich. They always react to these changes as if something strange has just happened, and this will ultimately contribute to them breaking the illusion of the show. Welcome to Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, the ultimate guide about everything you need to know ever, because my opinion is more important than everyone else's. My name is Vinny, let me explain. Can I just say something really quick? All right, let's just acknowledge that my lighting game has really improved.
Nice lighting, bro.
I know, right? Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. Number 1. That's why we're all here, right? That's what started it all. This is the very first episode and the most impactful of all because we weren't expecting any crazy shit to happen. We didn't have those expectations that we had with the later episodes. And it's also important to note that the creators didn't have any intentions of making any more after this. If we look at when they were released, Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared 2 came out 2 years after the original, over 2 years actually. Then the episodes came out less than a year apart every time. So I don't think Becky and Joe knew that there were going to be more episodes until they made episode 2, or at least well after the first one. The episode encompasses the entire meaning of Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. It's the first one, after all, and I think it should be the basis for anyone's theory. There is no explicit intention for a long-term series, so this episode should have a meaning all into itself. It should be quite isolated from the others. It doesn't span across other episodes, so we don't need the entire series in order to explain it. Of course, the other episodes follow the same theme, but they aren't essential in talking about the very first one, since it was intended to be a standalone film. As we'll see in all the other episodes, the puppets' ideals are always manipulated for profit. At the beginning of this episode, we see a newspaper entitled Right Wing, with stocks flying high. Get it? Because right wing and flying, there's a bird on the, yeah. Anyway, I see this as profit made by the media and exploitation of the puppets and the television show that they're a part of. The atmosphere, as always, is very fluffy, very cute. It's that of a children's television show. Very non-threatening. Some inanimate objects have eyes, even the cactus is smiling. And then comes the notepad, a friendly character who comes along to try and teach the puppets how to be more creative. Everything seems normal and pleasant, everything you'd expect from a children's television show. It seems that they're being encouraged to think differently and to think for themselves. The first interesting part is when the notepad shows everyone her hair. She says that this is how she expresses herself. Of course, Red Guy isn't very interested. He has a different opinion. He tells her that he finds it really boring. And then she repeats herself with a sterner tone in order to enforce her ideals. Now, important to note here, Red Guy has a different opinion and she's not okay with that. Next up, the notepad asks the puppets what they can see when they look up into the sky. At first they see nothing. I mean, it's just clouds, right? And then they see what she wants them to see when she raises her magnifying glass. Or is it a monocle? Altering their vision and outlook on the world. Now, as we're going to uncover, there are many words throughout the series that are misspelt on purpose. This is representative of the disingenuous nature of the media and their toxic tendency to spread misinformation. I think this is the first instance of this. Whenever you see this shot, everyone always says that this says tome and not time. This could also be foreshadowing the second episode, which is all about time, but as I said, I don't believe they actually had the idea for that episode at this point, so nah. Yellow guy tries to paint a picture of a clown, and famously it's destroyed with black ink because it doesn't fit the dominant way of thinking here. And also, notice the painting on the wall with a ship sailing on a black sea, similar to the oil used here. Then of course the notepad asks the puppets to arrange some sticks into their favorite colors, giving them an approved choice of colors in this diagram here. Yellow guy doesn't care and spells out the word green, but of course that isn't a creative color. That will be a dominant theme throughout the series, as I'm sure all of you probably already knows. The next part is also interesting, and I failed to bring it up in past explanations. The notepad says, listen to your heart, listen to the rain, listen to the voices in your brain. Listen to your heart is a ruse. It's kind of like, yeah, listen to your heart, but listen to the rain and the voices in your brain. And I think the rain represents brainwashing, and I'll be linking this later on as well, but listen to the voices in your brain is obviously a hint to the voices in your brain being voices that the media and other factors have put in there. That's what the notepad has put into their brain, brainwashing. Get it? Because the brain makes sense, okay? Notice the diagram of the brain. It has a green section, which is the temporal lobe. The temporal lobe is involved in processing sensory input into derived meanings for the appropriate retention of visual memories. Basically, it's associated with creativity more than any other part of the brain. Also, green is always associated with creativity. According to some studies, green actually makes people more creative. Now for the fun part, the notepad tells the puppets to get creative in a sequence that looks exactly like Art Attack. I grew up on that. Any of you grew up on that? Art Attack? Yeah, he agrees with me. This is where it all breaks down. When the notepad tells the puppets to go crazy, be creative, we're given a peek behind the scenes. We see the director chair, the camera, the mic, all of that kind of stuff. We see that the show is nothing more than a manufactured product in order to make money. And as we see in the director chair, behind the camera, that kind of stuff, we see big googly eyes, which are very similar to some of the props on the set. Eyes that are always there, always watching, always making sure you're standing in line, not getting up to any funny business. Don't be smoking any of that marijuana, okay? Things go downhill from here. The characters appear to grow up and act crazy, literally crazy. Eating hearts and organs. Earlier, the notepad told them to listen to their heart, and now they're actually eating hearts. This shows the psychological effects of the brainwashing and the influence and effect the media has over them. And again, we see the rain. It starts to rain, representing the brainwashing. Told you it made sense. They all grow up and change somewhat, except the red guy, who was already kind of quite mature. He was always the most mature of the bunch. And this whole insane, crazy part of the video is just a representation of the impact the media can have over time, especially on developing minds, since this very first episode is essentially about a children's television show. Now, all of them kind of mimic that same theme, but this one especially is specifically about that. After this crazy ordeal, we go back to our former situation as if nothing happened, but Yellow Guy noticed. Yellow Guy kind of looks around perplexed. He's like, what the hell just happened? So they all clearly actually experienced it, and it wasn't some kind of a dream or something. It was a part of the show, but of course, the television's kids show, you could just cut and manipulate however you want. So they were literally shown insanity. They were shown what would happen to them if they were creative. Hence, at the end, why the notepad says, now let's all agree never to be creative again. This is literally the message they're trying to instill within children and in the media in general. You need to fit this certain aspect. You need to grow up and become a part of society without disturbing it or making any noise or changing it or thinking for yourself. And as we're about to see, the series will continue to build on that, but it will become even more. And it's exciting. I hope you're excited, viewer. Ha! Cut. That was a joke, but yeah, literally cut. Don't hug me, I'm scared too. Time. It's time Don't hug me, I'm scared too.
If you keep making that joke, we're gonna get ticked off.
No, I didn't clock that you did that, man.
This time around, Becky and Joe have a plan in mind because keep in mind that 4 months after the release of Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared 2, the Kickstarter campaign was launched. So at this point, they definitely had intentions of making more. I think I'd go as far to say that they've even planned all of the other episodes because they've been looking for financing for quite a while at this point, so I definitely think that the rest of the episodes were planned. This is also the first episode where we see Easter eggs appearing, which is pretty goddamn logical because it's the second episode and it's referring to the first episode. It's giving a little wink, shove, shove, you know. That's not it. A little wink, wink, shove, shove towards the very first episode. There we see the picture of the clown at one point. And some people have used the fact that Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared 1 doesn't have any Easter eggs as a core part of their analysis. But the only reason that there aren't any Easter eggs there is because there's nothing to reference. It was the first of its kind. What Easter eggs could you possibly put in there? And while we're on about Easter eggs, I'm not going to be showing you all the Easter eggs because there's way too many. That's not what it's about. This isn't what this video is about. I don't feel like the Easter eggs add anything to the analysis. Unless we're talking about Roy, who appears everywhere throughout all the episodes, because that actually signifies something. But, you know, references to past episodes doesn't really help our analysis much. So as per the title, this episode is about time, and more specifically, though, it's about the structured nature of television and the invasive nature of it, and advertisements also. The clock teaches the puppets that time is not to be wasted on fun, that time is something that's going to run out, and he literally shows them what will happen when it does, and that they should concentrate on the things that matter, such as the latest gadgets and gizmos. Gizmos, who says that? I do, apparently. Hence the criticism of advertisements and their invasive nature. The first item of interest is when the duck says that 5 minutes until the show starts isn't enough time. A criticism of the structured nature of television and the forced sort of schedule they have. The media have leverage. They decide when your content is viewable and they decide what content that is, as opposed to the internet. Now, this isn't specific to this episode. This is my overall theory. If you've seen my Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared 6 explained analysis video, then you might have already heard of it. Otherwise, that will be in the conclusion of this video. But a part of that theory, a part of that overall theory that's important as well, this episode is the first episode to reference June 19th, 1955, which, as some of you may know, that's a key point of the overall theory. But let's move on. So the teacher begins to sing per usual and forces the puppets to take a bath. Now, they're already clean, they say. Well, if they say it's true, so that means they're already clean. But again, this is just representative of the forced nature. Basically, throughout this entire episode, the clock is going to force them to do things. They're going to force them to do things at a certain time, and that's sort of the overall theory about on this. I use words good. So the clock forcing the puppets to take a bath is kind of like TV forcing you to watch an advertisement you don't want to watch. The syringe in the timeline right here is quite puzzling to a lot of viewers. Why is it there? What does it mean? And I don't think we need to look too deep into it. There are some things you just kind of brush past. I don't think the syringe has a specific meaning. It's just something that's out of place. It's just something that you wouldn't expect within a TV show and amongst other mundane activities on the timeline. So I don't think we need to delve too deep into it.
What if the syringe represents hypodermic needle theory?
The what?
Hypodermic needle theory.
Can you tilt it towards...
So like they inject it basically?
Yeah.
So
hypodermic
that's what I mean.
needle theory is the theory that when you sit down to watch television or read the paper, your mind prepares to receive information, making it easier for information to be given to you without questioning it. It's an effect on passive audiences. So say you stare at the news for 10 hours, you're going to believe whatever's on the news. But if you sit and think, all right, I'm going to watch the news and I'm going to decide for myself if it's real or if it's not, then the hypodermic needle effect has failed.
That's cool.
Back to Vinny in the studio, just to inject my input.
Vinny, your opinion, please.
So yeah, that's awesome. See, look, that my whole point is that this is a theory and this is an opinion-based thing, right? And then we just had Chris, the pun master, just be like, well, I think this is what this means, and that's a cool theory. I've never heard an explanation for the syringe thing before, so yeah, man, that's how it works. We got a comment live during the show. So next, the clock compares time to a merry-go-round, and he keeps repeating it round and round like a merry-go-round. Within the childish comparison, he could relate and thus kind of making him susceptible to that. He believes and trusts in this adult figure, this very friendly looking figure who obviously must know more about the world than he does. And here at this part, here we have it once again, the clock getting in the way of their show. All they want to do is watch the show, representative of an advertisement that would kind of block your viewing. Time is getting in the way of the show, supporting the theory that the creators are comparing internet content to television content, or at least just criticizing television content. The internet is on demand, whereas television dictates, time dictates when you watch your content and how you consume it. Now the clock transports the puppets back to Victorian times, except it's not Victorian times, it's a really weird version of Victorian times. It's the clock's version of Victorian times. They sell cobbles and there's a weird guy talking about sawdust and covered in slime. This is all very non-classic for Victorian times, pretty out of place. It's just showing again how disingenuous and the spread of misinformation from the media, as usual, as they tend to do a lot in this series. Not sure if you noticed. In the next part, the clock makes sure that all the puppets know about time and how important it is and how limited it is. Everything dies, everything ends at some point. Everything rots over time is the phrase he uses. Everything has an end. Death is imminent, basically, which is true, guys. You're all gonna die. Everyone you love, everyone you care about, everything you've ever seen or known to exist is going to end, and that's the fact. It's also important to note that time flies fast when you're having fun, so you gotta really spend it on what matters. There's a time and a place for having fun. Again, going back to that schedule, that rigorous scheduling. Yellow Guy's dad, Roy, makes his first appearance in this episode. He says he's friends with his dad, which I think puts some of the blame on the parents as well, because the parents are the filter by which they consume their content. Their parents should be the people who decide what they watch and what they don't watch. So they kind of have a foot in this as well. As we're going to find out in the overall theory, Roy represents the media. He's creepy, he's weird, he represents everything that is bad, and he is overall manipulating everyone. Everyone is a puppet, and he's ahead of rambling, apparently. Next up is the future. I don't know why I even try. Yeah, the future. So the clock shows the puppets the future, basically. He shows them all the gadgets and the stuff, all the shiny new gizmos. An old man died. Who cares? We've got computers now. Replace your human emotions with a never-ending lust for the new iPhone. The puppets are all hooked up to a machine that looks specifically built for them, and it looks kind of like the machine in the very last episode. The clock shows them all the wonderful and amazing things you can do in regards to technology. This isn't criticizing technology, but instead it's criticizing the consumerist push that makes you believe that you need all of these things, that you need the new iPhone, that you need to shoot on red cameras, that you need good lights, that you need a mirror. Then Roy steps in, of course, with his very disturbing porn addiction. I've got nothing against porn. Personally, I would never touch that stuff, but well, do what you want to do. If you want to go into a look site, that's fine, but don't watch it with your kid. You've got the yellow guy right next to him. Disturbing. It just shows how adult the media world can be, and that children are exposed to this adult world regardless. Now for the fish. Fish! The characters are met with an onslaught of fish everywhere. They list off different times, some of them don't make any sense, and there are fish. There are fish everywhere. Fish everywhere. This is again just the invasive nature of the media and advertisements. It's everywhere. You can't escape it. Drawing to the end of this episode, the clock summarizes the importance of time and the importance of a schedule, of a rigid schedule. Basically, he's campaigning for a structured existence. But the puppets ask questions. They challenge the very idea of time. They suggest that it might just be a product of human perception, that it may not even be something that's physical or real or observable. The clock becomes very angry with the resistance of the puppets and begins to scream like an alarm clock. On the board that the duck is using to expand his theory, we see a few things that are kind of puzzling. Well, first off, pi equals 19.06. That's pretty obvious. That's his reference to the 19th of June, and we'll get to the 19th of June later. But something else more puzzling lies there. We see swastika equals MC squared. Now, what the hell could that possibly mean? This has never been explained very well, and I don't think it ever will be, but for me, I think this is just a reference to the time period, 19 1955. Of course, the Nazis were overthrown at that point, but if you take a look at the missing videos, the kidnappers have a symbol on their arm that looks quite similar. It's obviously supposed to be a parody of the swastika, so that's the only connection I can make. In the end of the video, the clock shows the puppets what is going to happen to you when you die. Scare tactics. This is what's going to inevitably happen to you in the end. So you must do what I tell you to do. You must use your time wisely the way I think you should, the way society thinks you should. The video finishes with the camera dollying away and out of the television screen, revealing the puppets back in their original positions. The fact that all of this kind of happened in a television screen, it just points to the theory I've been alluding to this whole time. This is about the impact of the media, and more specifically the structured routine that it imposes. And if my overall theory is to be believed, it also kind of compares this to the internet, comparing this rigid structured routine compared to the internet, where it's all on demand and the viewers choose what and when they want to watch their content. And also there's hints to advertising and forcing people, or brainwashing people into believing that they need to buy the latest shit. The show is a critique of television and the media, so you always have to keep that in mind when you're analyzing Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. So we're halfway there. Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared 3. Now this one is my favorite, I think, and it's definitely not very subtle in its message, which is probably why it's my favorite, because I have to explain these bloody things. The production value and the music here is the highest it's been. I think it's beautiful, and the music is just addicting. Yellow Guy is the focus of this one, being targeted by the butterfly to be thought all about love. Until it turns out they're all religious fanatics who are trying to brainwash him and change his entire way of life. The puppets enjoy Day Outside, the only episode, fun fact, that takes place outside and not inside the puppet's house. The Yellow Guy enjoys the company of a butterfly before the duck squashes it, which sends Yellow Guy into a fit and he storms off. So the Yellow Guy decides to retreat up into a tree when the butterfly approaches him. The butterfly tells Yellow Guy that he understands him, that there's violence in the world, that it's horrible, and that he will offer him a solution. He's going to teach him all about love if he just comes with him and holds his hand.
Yay!
He's exploiting his pain, which will ultimately lead to profit, as it always does. But Yellow Guy is confused, obviously. He doesn't know much about love. He's the youngest and the most immature. He's never had any experience with this, so the butterfly takes advantage of it and tries to teach him about it. And that's pretty much what happens in all the episodes. They're teaching the puppets about things that the puppets don't know about, taking advantage of their lack of knowledge and filling their brains with mush. So the Yellow Guy is brought to meet his friends. They all love him, even though they've never met him before. A very disingenuous bunch. I'm just going to call them the Love Meisters. Yellow Guy pets one of the animals and tells him that he loves him. I'm not going to try and identify the animal, because if I do, everyone will give me shit for it, so I'm going to avoid that. So the Yellow Guy pets the animal and responds to him by saying, "I love you too, furry boy." Then we cut to a close-up shot of the animal saying in a very sexual and inappropriate voice, harder. I believe that this is a hint towards the darker and very adult side of media, but this video is about religion. And as we will see throughout the explanation, it targets one religion in particular, Christianity. And Yellow Guy is a kid. He's a young, immature, unexperienced person. And this animal is supposed to represent religious beliefs or people within the religious faith. And he's acting inappropriately and being sexual towards somebody who's very young. The reference the creators are trying to make here is pretty obvious, but I'll let you figure it out for yourself.
Pedo!
The chicken at the picnic is raw, and so are the eggs. And when the red guy and the duck finish eating them, there's blood everywhere. It's pretty gross. And I've never really understood what that meant up until now. But I believe it's a representation of, well, it's basically a stab at meat eaters. More specifically, the meat industry and the way animals are processed and all of that. So I would expect the creators are vegetarian. So also they choose to eat the chicken picnic first before helping their friend. Note the irony at the beginning when the Yellow Guy gets upset over the butterfly being killed, but is happy to eat a whole chicken picnic. Also, Yellow Guy's friends don't come to help him until they've eaten the chicken picnic first, showing their misguided priorities and value of life. The pause after the duck says, "and we have finished the chicken picnic," represents just that. The butterfly shows Yellow Guy the good side of religion, the reason people are attracted in the first place. Good values, kindness, sharing. I mean, this guy loves him so much, he gives him a thing from the very first episode. But of course, Yellow Guy expresses love for everything around him instantly, but this isn't the way love should be used according to the butterfly. He is told that he must save his love for his special one. The special one shown here is supposed to be destined for his love. Now, she's a woman, she's the same color as him, she's made for him. Apparently, there's no room for LGBTQIP2SAA here. No, none of that shit.
You're triggering me!
Yellow Guy immediately doubts the fact that there is a special one out there for him, and he regurgitates what the butterfly told him before, that he's lonely. But he didn't think he was lonely before meeting the butterfly. He's been brainwashed, clearly. Then comes the story of Michael, the loneliest boy in town. A very contradictory tale that the Lovemeisters tell Yellow Guy to try and, soothe him. Like, yeah, look, everyone has a special one, except he doesn't have a special one. Wait, religion? Lying? What? They'd never deny facts. The Lovemeisters go on to claim that partners must be identical. They died together. They're the same. It's tradition. It's the way it's always been. It's pure. And most importantly, it's protected by a ring. Their fanatic ideals claim that this is the way all love goes. That it's forever and ever. And the way they illustrate the notion of forever is by a flower that keeps growing and growing. Add that to the list of contradictions. Now we get to reveal the catch. They all worship Malcolm, their king of love. Now, in case you hadn't figured out which certain specific type of religious fanatics that are being criticized here, there's another holy figure that is very commonly referred to as the king of love. And what does their king require of them? Why does he matter? He requires feeding. He needs gravel, or else he will be angry. And yet again, what other religion has constructed a corporation-like hierarchy based on profit? Bingo! And you get brainwashed, and you get brainwashed, and you get brainwashed.
What? Wait.
There's more! The Lovemeisters tell Yellow Guy that the only thing he has to do is change everything about himself, to forget everything he ever knew. Change his name, clean his brain, give up his freedom, his independence, his free will, and then he'll be happy. He'll never be alone. Now, I don't think this should be seen as a critique of religion itself or even religious values. I see this a lot more as a critique of fanatics and organizations, institutions that take advantage of children, that brainwash them for profit, but just people in general. There are just a lot of mega churches and very well-known hierarchies that are very exploitative, in my opinion. I don't hold any ill will towards anybody who wishes to practice religion or believe in a god, but I do believe that some people, a certain type of person, is exploited from a very young age to join a community that they otherwise wouldn't have been interested in. This was also my opinion in my explanation of the Westboro Baptist Church. In fact, I compared them to the communist state of North Korea. All you have to do is believe in God, that there's a plan for you, that your friends and family will be protected. You'll have friends that go to church with you and go to social gatherings with you. You'll find a woman within the same community, a nice woman who you'll love forever, and you'll never be alone. It's true. It seems nice. And if you find comfort in that and you lead a good and respectable life without intruding on other people's rights, then there's nothing wrong with that. That's just fine. But it's brainwashing nonetheless, I believe, and the creators obviously feel that way. And again, this is my interpretation, so take it however you will. But the critique here is that they are brainwashing children. They're taking advantage of weak-minded individuals during their developmental stages. Not that all people who practice religion or believe are weak-minded, it's just that in this case, Yellow Guy is weak-minded and he's the youngest of all the puppets. Yellow Guy is awakened and his friends are there to greet him and to comfort him. They give him the very last boiled egg. The Red Guy tells Yellow Guy that it must be because they love him. Real love, that is. Actual friendship, actual love. Not love with a catch, not love that you get when you enter a community focused on gaining profit from you. A caterpillar emerges from the egg, calls Yellow Guy father, but the duck squashes him and calls him a pesky bee. Pesky bee? I think this final action represents the prevention of religious brainwashing at a young age. The butterfly represented this hierarchy, this evil part of religious fanaticism. So his offspring must also So to squash him is to prevent him from causing any more harm or exploiting anyone else. But I do admit this is quite confusing, and it took me a while to kind of think of this. And it's open to interpretation as always, so yeah, guy, you're probably right. Don't listen to me, I'm just a dumb, ginger-bearded arsehole on the internet.
Not just on the internet. Hey. Boom, 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 boom.
Hate you all. Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared 4. This is the first episode in which one of the puppets shatters the illusion. This episode is about the internet, how invasive it can be, as well as the advertisements that we see on the internet. But just as the past episode on religion, I don't see this as a critique on the internet itself, but of certain aspects of the internet. The invasive nature of advertisements and the fact that you're being monitored online, you're being watched. It also criticizes the disconnect from reality. The puppets get completely sucked in, where they don't even exist in the real world. So their puppets are in the sitting room, Easter eggs galore. Notice the picture in the back of Yellow Guy and his dad. It's raining, going back to my theory that the rain represents brainwashing. The set design is full of square eyes. In the carpet, on the board game, square eyes that resemble that of the computers. The rug also has a very Illuminati-like quality to it. All of this symbolizing the constant monitoring by the higher powers online. The puppets are faced with a big question. What is the biggest thing in the world?
My dick!
So the biggest thing I can think of in the world, in terms of not actual size, but reach and influence, is of course the internet and the media. I think that's what they're going for with this question. A friendly looking globe comes in to answer, but we see an old school computer jump in and interrupt. We're going to see a lot of this from him. The globe representing reality, something real, the world. It's something physical that you can actually look at and interact with, whereas the computer is something digital, artificially made, something that you can't physically interact with. Also, notice the desk where the computer appears used to lie a quill and ink, and now lies a computer, symbolizing the shift in technology, going from real physical information to digital information made up of ones and zeros. The computer begins to introduce himself, insisting that there is a mind inside his digital mind, revealing a quite disgusting little brain emerging from his face. It's a mass of wires and junk, symbolic of, well, what a computer's mind might look like. It's small, it's made for intaking information. So the computer isn't as smart as we think it is. It's basically not real, not human. It's nothing compared to the size of a human brain. Red Guy asks the computer the question they've all been wondering, but he interrupts them, doesn't answer it, and starts to boast about how smart he is. He counts to a 50 in the blink of his eye. Now notice the number chart here that would typically be used to teach children how to count. It's completely wrong. Now for advertising. Oats, they're everywhere. They're at the table being eaten, and they pop up numerous times within this episode and other episodes too. The computer even tells the puppets that he can help them to find something they're wanting to find at a certain point, and takes his magnifying glass, hint to the very first episode, and shows them an advertisement for oats in the newspaper. The fact that oats are everywhere and they're seen in many of the frames during this episode and other episodes is just representative of advertisements and the invasive nature, the invasion of personal space. And take a look at this newspaper titled Opinion, clearly mocking the media that is supposed to be objective when they're very clearly very opinionated and very biased. The Red Guy says that they already have a computer and refers to a modern looking laptop on the other side of the room. The old bulky computer dismisses this and moves right along with his whole thing. And I think this is representative of old media transitioning to new media, to old technology to new technology. And this plays to my overall theory about transition from one generation to the next. But of course, we'll talk about that in the conclusion. Next up, the computer demands information from the puppets, like where they live and what their preferences are. Obviously symbolic of this information that is demanded of us when we use any sort of site. It's collected by websites and organizations all over the internet. That is ultimately used to be sold to advertisers and also, sold off to government agencies or whoever demands the information. Red Guy, as usual, questions the computer and even tries to stop him, which causes the computer to get mad and they plummet into a virtual world. They go on to have a conversation about what is real and what isn't real. The computer insists that they aren't themselves in this world, they're their virtual selves. Indeed, just take Facebook for example. I mean, we build this beautiful representation of our lives, but it isn't really us. There's a disconnection with reality here, and that's kind of half the point of this entire episode. The mirror right here that is shown to Yellow Guy is representative of vanity and of just this. And so is digital style, which we'll see in a minute. In the digital world, we are told there are 3 things to do. First one is to obtain information, Wikipedia, etc. The second is digital style, which represents social media and bolstering yourself to others. And finally, we have digital dancing, which is representative of fun, of basically wasting time and just having fun online. So in classic Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared fashion, things start to get weird and a rave breaks out spontaneously. The duck and the yellow guy have been fully sucked into the machine. They no longer even exist in the real world. We see them flicker for a second, but that's about it. In the main dance room, they're all hooked up to one big machine made up of a few different television screens. Metaphor here, I don't even have to explain it. The red guy, however, stays in the real world. He isn't as gullible or as easily manipulated as the other 2 are, while Roy lurks in the corner. Red guy follows the cable from the computer, intending to shut it down and free his friends. It leads him into a very poorly constructed set of the very first Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. It represents a harsh reality. When you take away the digital aspect of it, when you take away all of the computer processing and all of the fakeness pretty much, this is what you get. This is the harsh reality. It's all stripped away. This is what's real. The harsh reality of the media, when you get down to it, reality is pretty shit. The cable leads straight into a camera, of course, representing the media. Yellow guy is a balloon, the duck is a duck, and red guy is a mop. The creators, who are in white morph suits, are very surprised to see him, and one of them runs over with a clapperboard and calls cut, causing red guy's head to explode. Well, to pop, really, like a balloon. He is red after all, so I suppose you could say he popped his cherry. Red guy wasn't supposed to be here. He broke the illusion of the show. He was able to see past all the bullshit and see into reality and see what is actually going on. He's no longer a part of the fabrication created by the media. Therefore, he ceases to exist within it. He is the first to realize what is happening to him, and he escapes. This is the first episode that sets in motion the plot that will ultimately build up to the final episode, which will reveal everything. And over the course of the next few episodes, the other characters will also realize what is happening to them, although they won't fare as well as Red Guy did. Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared 5. Is this 5? It is. This episode is all about food, about the media, of course, as it always bloody is, man. They've got some sort of an obsession with it. Food is so important to us. If you eat healthy, you're more likely to be happy. That's the harsh reality, kids, I'm sorry. Santa Claus, if he was real, he'd be dead already. Diabetes type 2, bitch. And this episode criticizes just that. Man, I'm an asshole. It criticizes the fact that something so important, such as our health, is being exploited, is being manipulated for profit by the media. So the puppets are in the kitchen and they're both missing Red Guy, but they don't quite realize he's gone. It hasn't sunk in. They're still under the influence of the media. Red Guy, of course, has been freed, and in this episode we're going to see him multiple times behind the scenes, lurking in corners, stuff like that, just like Roy. Both of them are now on the outside of the manipulative media. The duck will come to realize the Red Guy's disappearance and the ridiculous nature of the show that he exists in. So this kind of green shit, spinach I assume, I mean, who eats that? Who cares? Tells Yellow Guy that he looks hungry, and Yellow Guy straight up just says no. This is a sign of a resistance. This is a sign of them disconnecting from the show. And as always, the teachers are always trying to tell them what they feel and how to act, and that's not gonna fly anymore. Now we see the steak guy, who I absolutely hate, man. He's so fucking terrifying. No, but imagine a giant steak with arms and legs and eyes and a mouth, and it's singing to you.
My main question here is, which part would be tastier? Like, would you want the center, or would you go for like an arm?
I don't know, man. I just want him to die. So anyway, the giant steak character pokes the duck multiple times, and he's not having any of that. Obviously symbolic of invasiveness, invasion of personal space. Whenever this happens, whenever the teachers impose something on the puppets, it's pretty much always symbolic of that. Especially here, I mean, he's literally poking him. They tell the puppets that whatever they eat has to be healthy. There's an emphasis on this. It has to be healthy, but they will decide what is healthy, of course. The threat is that their teeth or their gums, they don't quite decide on that, will go all grey. That's the threat. There's always a threat, you know, heart disease, cancer. Cancer is the big one in our society. Everything gives you cancer. Look up the list of what gives you cancer. Living gives you cancer. Exactly, so this happens in the show. It's very contradictory. And this threat of having their teeth or gums go all grey is inexistent. That's not a real thing. Your teeth or gums can't go grey to my knowledge. The threat is fictional. They basically made up a scare tactic in order to sell unhealthy food to people. And Yellow Guy, being his usual gullible self and just enjoying it, you know, food is talking. Then a yellow phone starts to ring, and this is going to happen throughout the entire episode. This is Red Guy. As we'll see at the very end in the credits, he's walking away from a red telephone box with a number on it. We'll get to that number later, but Red Guy is the one ringing the phone. And this phone isn't supposed to be there. This phone, whoever's creating all of this, so Roy, doesn't want the duck to pick up the phone. The phone is Red Guy trying to warn him of where he is and what is happening to him. When he picks up the phone, he's brought into reality, into a dark room where we see the show on the screen, and then he's brought back in. So this isn't supposed to happen. This is a fault in the broadcast. And when he's in reality for the first time in the episode, we hear, "You need to know what's right from wrong," in a very eerie, sarcastic, manipulative tone. Back to the show. Now the puppets are being shown a house with different organs and hair, and well, Red Guy makes an appearance in there. So bread and pizza are regarded as healthy because they stay in the house and don't leave, whereas carrots and eggs are regarded as unhealthy foods because they leave the house. So basically this whole diagram and what the teachers are trying to tell the puppets, they're pro-obesity. This is basically, yeah, these foods stay in your body and cause you to get fatter, so they're good for you. Obviously this is all ridiculous, and the duck questions the house, but he's given a very harsh look by the can, and they just continue to sing and they ignore him. And Yellow Guy goes along with it. He's totally hooked. So the phone rings again in the house diagram here. The duck picks it up, and instead of going to reality, he's straight away transported to the next part of the show. The phone is replaced with a sandwich, which is why I said at the beginning of this video, the cut happens in reality for him. He experiences it. And he's completely confused. Too many cuts are being made. Too many things are changing instantaneously, and he can't deal with it anymore. He won't do it anymore. Whoever's running the show, whoever's behind the scenes making these cuts, does not want the duck to pick up the phone. Now we move on to a food chart. It's wrong and very confusing, symbolizing the just misleading and confusing nature of food advertisements and what we're told about what is healthy and what is unhealthy. We constantly go through these different trends of it's calories in, calories out, or it's all about carbs, or it's all about this and that. This gives you cancer, this doesn't. It's completely misleading and it's very confusing, and this is symbolic of that. I mean, hell, we used to think cigarettes were good for you and could even cure asthma, and that's referenced with the cigarette in this food chart. Big corporations always want you to believe that their products are healthy and good for you, and that's why it's all so confusing, and they would very easily manipulate you in order to gain profit. Now that doesn't happen as much today. It has happened throughout history, and it still does happen today. I mean, we're all being manipulated by advertisements. You see an advertisement for Coke, and then you just want a Coke. It's so refreshing, and look at all the people drinking it. They're so happy. Fuck's sake, I mean, it's ridiculous. Oh, it's so good. Then we're shown a replica of a body. And now, simple foods like white sauce and aspic go through fine. They're supposed to be healthy, whereas show-offy complicated foods such as fruit salad and soil foods, aka vegetables, clog up the body and are bad for you. And the steak shows this by, well, taking the diagram of the body and crushing it, and oh no, it's all broken and on the floor. And the duck finally frees himself. The illusion is broken. He won't stand for it anymore. When the camera is pushed away and it falls, we see Roy up in the top corner looking over everything, and we see Red Guy's feet. Then the teachers concentrate on Yellow Guy, all ganging up on him. He's being fed more contradictory and false information. I mean, at one point he even says, "You'll end up sad inside," playing with emotions, using emotions as leverage. And they even drug him. They give him onion paste, which turns out not to be onion paste. Symbolic of, well, the big corporations and food companies taking advantage of him, of the media taking advantage of him. And the next time we see him, he's fallen victim to them. He's obese. He's eaten his life away. We see a freaky animation, and we see X's in the duck's eyes. The duck has been devoured. Because when we see him in reality, and he wakes up in that dark, dark room, he is being eaten alive by giant cans. His face is on the cans himself. He is inside of the cans. I don't know if any of you grew up in the UK. I did up until the age of 8, and I remember eating shapes. You guys remember eating shapes?
Yeah.
What kind of shapes?
Any sort of shape. I love Nick's laugh. Yeah, right, guys. I used to eat Thomas the Tank Engine shapes. You get these unhealthy, you know, cans of just calories and pasta.
No, smiley faces.
Smiley faces are pretty good as well. The point is you get these cans of cancer that are marketed to you using your favorite television characters or your favorite whatever. Thomas the Tank Engine, Peppa Pig, I think that's the thing. They're exploiting children, they're causing obesity. I mean, it's been a huge problem in the UK. Remember Jamie Oliver when he was trying to fix that? I mean, I remember being in school and having these disgusting lunches that were just awful for you, and you're not really having that many alternatives. The UK is quite a fat nation, actually. It's true. So yes, that's a big part of the episode, using characters from television shows to market unhealthy food. And the yellow guy is a victim of this. We see him having eaten the can with the duck's branding on it. He's become obese and he can no longer move, it seems. He's a victim. He always has been. He always will. And the red phone begins to ring, but he's unable to pick it up. Criticizing obesity and disingenuous food companies by using characters as a marketing ploy to push unhealthy food. Again, the yellow guy, the victim, he's a child that doesn't know any better, so of course he's the most easily manipulated. And during the credits, we see the red guy, as I said before, walking away from a red telephone booth. He has been making these calls. He's been trying to save his friends, but he hasn't accomplished his goal. I mean, the duck guy has met his end, and the yellow guy is still under the influence, and he's still a part of the show. Ultimately, this episode served to further the plotline of all the characters and to criticize the media, of course, as always, but food companies in particular, and advertisements in regards to food and nutrition. There's also a number on the telephone booth during the credits. Now, I did try to phone this the very first time when the episode came out. It didn't work for me, but there are videos of people online on YouTube who have rang it and it's worked. And they talked to some of the characters from the show. Now, I don't know if these were automated voices, they most likely were. But sometimes it did seem that the people making the calls were actually interacting with some of the characters. Now, I very much doubt that they're still working today. But hell, why not try?
The mobile phone you have called is not available.
That was anticlimactic.
Yeah, so obviously it doesn't work. It didn't when I tried it back in the day, and it still doesn't work. But it did work for some people, and that's pretty cool. So yeah, now we finally get to move on to the last episode, the final episode that wraps everything up and reveals everything, and it's so cool, guys. I'm so excited. If you've been watching all of these theories, then man, wow, I really appreciate you. You're awesome. There's probably not that many people watching at this point right now. You're special. The final episode, Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared 6. We were promised that everything would be revealed, and we were not disappointed. Everything was revealed. We know what everything is about. At least I think I do. And I went into that in my Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared 6 explained video. I went into my overall theory. Right now, I'm going to concentrate on the specifics of this episode. And then in the conclusion, I will explain everything and the ending. Because the ending of the last episode, well, that's the ending to the entire series and the key to understanding everything. But enough of that, let's get into it. Yellow guy is all alone and he's missing his friends. And this is a step up from the last episode where he didn't even notice that red guy was missing. So yellow guy is beginning to reject what the show is teaching him. We saw it a little bit in the last episode when he said no to the tinned can. And now he's not rejecting it because he's no longer gullible or easily manipulated. Now he's rejecting it simply because he misses his friends and he's emotionally unstable. Now the lamp is trying to teach him about dreams, something you can't teach. This is the ultimate brainwashing move. They're going to teach him how to dream because he doesn't know how to dream, right? He doesn't have his own dreams or ambitions. The one thing you think media wouldn't have access to are dreams and ambitions and goals. On their respective beds, we see their initials, R, Y, and D, red guy, yellow guy, and the ducks. So you can all stop it with their fan-given names because the creators never gave them any names. And I still don't know what the D on his overalls signifies. I mean, if I had all the answers, I mean, what would be the fun in that? So the yellow guy tries not to listen to the lamp. He tries to turn it off, but of course he's stuck in the show and they control everything, so he's forced into it. The lamp insists on trying to teach him how to have dreams. And of course Roy is everywhere. There are Easter eggs everywhere. No need to point them out. Let me give you a bit of information here. You're not revealing anything to me. I've seen all the Easter eggs. I know all the apparitions of Roy. Yes, even during the credits at the very end. You're not getting anything past me. Kind of what I do here. The animation segment in this first part of the video is a dream that Yellow Guy wakes up from. Now, if that isn't brainwashing, then I don't know what is. And then he drowns in oil, just like when his painting was destroyed by oil in the very first episode. Blackness, void, consuming him entirely. Then Red Guy wakes up in the real world. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean he was dreaming the first part of the episode. He might have been, but that doesn't mean that he dreamt the entire thing. All the other characters in the show have their own individuality and consciousness, and they also fight back against the show. I don't believe that Red Guy is a part of the media. I don't think he was behind it. I entirely reject that theory. And while we're on the topic of rejecting theories, I also don't believe that the show happened all in one day. I mean, it might have. It wouldn't make sense since we're going from the 19th of June to the 20th of June, which happens at the end of this episode. But there's no specific indication towards that. And even if there were, why? That doesn't really matter. I have a much better explanation for that, which we'll see later, of course. And now I'm just blabbering on. I think Roy being asleep on his desk just signifies how boring and mundane this world is. Now, Red Guy lives in a world that is bland, monotone, lacks creativity, lacks individuality. We see this when he goes to the bar, and we just see red guys everywhere. They're all the same. Now, some of them have facades, they have leather jackets, they're the cool guy, or they tell bad jokes. These are all things that aren't core to them. They're all the same red guy underneath. All of them are pretty much the same. I mean, just look at this shot right here. White, bland, they all have an office job. The overall color palette is very boring and lacks creativity. The piano being played on stage is also very mundane. It's terrible music, and that just is all representative of a mundane society. I've said mundane a lot, but it lacks creativity and individuality. They're all custom fit to slot into the society that they live in. And this is the result of mainstream media. Red Guy's boss hands him a file to file. The most boring thing the creators could have thought up. And our Red Guy makes a joke about how it would be funny if the file came to life and sang a song. Everyone in the office rejects this. They say that it sounds really boring. That sounds really boring. This is a reference to Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared itself. A show with puppets and gore would not thrive in normal society. Most people are going to latch onto this or find it amusing. It is only on the internet that this can thrive. And this links into my overall theory, but you're just gonna have to wait for that. Such a tease, or maybe I'm just a cunt. And in the same light, Red Guy goes on stage to sing the creative song, taking off his clothes, rejecting the society that he has fit into. He's changed himself completely in order to fit into this new world. He started to wear clothes. I'm a big fan of not wearing clothes myself. So when he walks on stage, he's showing his individuality. He's trying to be different. He takes off his clothes. To fit into society, he started wearing clothes. He got a degree, got a boring job. He was being a classic human, but right now in this moment on stage, he's trying to be himself and express his inner soul, man. He sings one of the songs that he used to love when he was young and innocent and a part of the show. This is what he's grown up watching. And yes, in the first episode, he did question the song. I mean, the song was trying to brainwash him, but now he's singing it for nostalgic reasons. He's singing it to express himself, ironically. And what I see this really representing, just like back in the office, this is the creative struggle. This is the creators talking through their characters. I mean, Joseph Pelling plays the Red Guy. This is the creators living through the characters and trying to sell Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared to a mainstream audience. But that's not going to work in mainstream media. Nothing like this would ever get on television. No big company would ever fund this. Most people wouldn't like it, but on the internet it can find its niche audience. The mainstream crowd obviously, unsurprisingly, boos him off stage and rejects his expression of himself and his different approach to entertainment. Then Roy shows up and the microphone says, "Don't stop now, friend. Your voice is music to my face." That is what he says. I don't know why people thought that the microphone said something else. Just listen to the episode, guys. He's then brought behind the scenes by Roy, behind the scenes of the media, a dark, weird kind of a place. And that's why the microphone and the tape player come to life. Red Guy sees the machine behind everything, the machine that controls the show. This machine controls the media and manipulates the puppets. He begins to fiddle with it, and no, he does not do it purposefully. He does not know what he's doing. He's pressing random buttons. He sees Yellow Guy suffering, and he tries to fix that. I thought it was pretty obvious that he was doing things at random. He presses randomly on the buttons and random characters appear. Even the file that he joked about earlier appears, showing just how much control they have with this machine. They can make anything a reality. They have complete 100% control. He was even able to resurrect the duck. Roy appears with his outstretching arm, representing the outreach of the media. He entices Red Guy to join him. That's why he's brought him behind the scenes. He's showing him the power he can have and the fame he can have, because obviously Red Guy was up on stage. He was trying to express himself but being rejected. Now behind the scenes, he's giving Red Guy a place to express himself, a place of power. But he sees his friend suffering. He sees the manipulation. He's gone through it, so he opts to unplug the machine. He finds the giant outlet and says, "I wonder what will happen." When he unplugs it, the image cuts and we are brought back to the very first set of Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, except the characters are different colors. They are their favorite colors from Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared 1. The color palette is very green. The door is green. The walls are a lighter shade of green. The exact color that the teachers and the old manipulative media didn't approve of. We transitioned from the 19th of June to the 20th, finally ending this freeze in time. The notepad appears one last time. He's a bit goofier, but it's still him or her. I mean, he's a notepad. I guess he's gender neutral. I'm so sorry for misgendering this fictional notepad. Anyway, that's where we cut. What does it all mean? This is the ending of the episode, so clearly this is the ending of the entire series. Well, first off, let's take a look at the 19th of June, and then we'll go into the overall conclusion. Now for the biggest mystery within Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, the infamous 19th of June. What does it mean? We've all been searching for the answer. It's you. Oh no.
There are three main popular theories that have been going around about Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared and the date of June 19th, 1955. One of the most popular theories is to do with the Argentina bombing that happened on the 19th. But it was later revealed that it happened on the 16th instead of the 19th. But it obviously did continue through to June 19th and continued afterwards. The second theory that a lot of people have been talking about in the comment section or on Reddit have been about the date 1906, 1955 being Father's Day, and the fact that the last episode was going to be released in 2016 on Father's Day. But I later debunked this theory by saying that on the Kickstarter that they wanted to upload every episode every 3 months after the Kickstarter. And if you actually work it out, they were actually intending to have the very last episode uploaded on June 19th, 2015. And they
June 19th, 2015.
Yeah, June 19th, 2015 was that's what they intended. If you read the Kickstarter, it says they were intending to do it. I've just said it on here, but on the
I'm just getting debunked. Right?
yeah, well, yeah, exactly, yeah.
You don't know anything, Vinny.
You don't know. Just let me do my thing.
Sorry, man.
And the third and final theory that has probably got more attention than all of them put together is the one that I actually saw in one of my comments section talking about the age groups. Now, in my actual theory about Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, I said that all characters represented different age groups. Red Guy being a teenager, because he was like all moody and all that, and the Yellow Guy being a kid, and the Duck Guy as an elderly. Now, someone actually commented below saying that what if the date actually represented their ages? Red Guy as 19, Yellow Guy as 6 years old, and Duck Guy as 55. When I actually mentioned this before, a lot of people obviously said that the Duck Guy doesn't sound like he would fit in the elderly group. But as I have actually researched it, in Britain, you can actually be classed as an elderly once you pass the age of 50. So it is very possible that he could still represent the elderly if you go by that theory. My final conclusion on June 19th was that there wasn't really a meaning there at the start, but then as they planned more episodes, they gave it a meaning. In the first episode, you can only see June 19th, but then as the second episode comes out, you actually see the full date. I believe that this particular date that they put in there might have been a special occasion for Becky and Joe, or it might have just been one of their birthdays. So yeah, that's my theory. I think, yeah, kind of like it.
Can I get
Oh
my
yeah,
thing?
yeah, cool.
Yeah, my fucking show, after all. So. That final theory on the 19th of June 1955 got me thinking. It's pretty interesting, and I think it might be accurate. I think the numbers do represent the puppet's age group. Now, even if these numbers didn't line up with their potential ages, I think it's still pretty obvious that they all represent different generations. The yellow guy is clearly a child. He wears overalls, he's always the easiest to be manipulated and influenced, he's always the victim, mostly. We saw it in the episode about love, and we saw it in the episode with the computer. He says, wow, I would love to be as smart as a computer. He's always the easiest to be influenced. He's consistently a victim, but he's not the only victim. The red guy has never been a victim, but the duck has been a victim. He was the victim of the food corporations. He was literally gutted. He is clearly older. He wears eccentric clothes. He carries a pocket watch, and he's very formal and polite. If you take a look at the help videos, the videos that were made for the Kickstarter, when he talks to the terrorist / kidnapper, he's very formal about it. He refers to him as a sir. He isn't as gullible. He came up with the theory about time in episode 2, but in the end, he was still manipulated by the media, by the food corporations. Red Guy is the only character that we see outside of the show. He's the only one that has managed to escape. Red Guy is closer to our age. This is shown by, in all the episodes, he's very sarcastic and he's always questioning everything. He doesn't want to fit into the system. So Red Guy, 19, Yellow Guy, 6, and the Duck, 55. So during his time on the show, when he was still a part of the media, he was 19. But as we see, he graduates from university, he gets a job, so he grows up a little, and that's why he abandons the show. He was the only one to realize what was happening. He was the only one to see past the smoke screen and actually do something with his life and escape. So I think that Yellow Guy, who represents very young children, a very young generation, and the Duck that represents an older generation, have both been sucked in entirely to the media. They have been victims of the media. They're 100% manipulated. That is why we never see them in the real world. They're stuck. They're stuck being manipulated. When the characters are in the show, such as when the Duck and Yellow Guy were sucked into the internet completely and they resided within the internet because they were being influenced by it, the same is happening in the show. When they're in the show, that represents them being completely manipulated and brainwashed. The red guy is the only one to leave the show. He was the only one to see past the smokescreen. And that is why the Duck and Yellow Guy never make it out, because they weren't able to escape the influence. So the Duck being stuck in the show represents the manipulation of an older audience, and the Yellow Guy being stuck there represents the manipulation of a young audience who don't know any better. And these three generations clearly have different opinions and views and are clearly influenced by different sources within the media. Take the UK referendum that took place recently. The older you were, the more likely it was that you would vote to leave, whereas the majority of young people voted to stay. Yellow Guy is symbolic of a younger generation of children who don't know any better, who don't have any other basis on which to criticize the information that is being given to them. And the Duck represents the elder generation who aren't as politically involved, who are more easily influenced by television. They've grown up with other sources of media and thus are very easily targeted. They're a much easier target than the 19-year-old who questions everything and who's trying to change the world and make his mark. The elder generation generally wants things to stay the way they are. They're afraid of change. They want things to be like they were in the good old days. Of course, this won't be true for every child, for every young person, for every old person. But generally speaking, we can observe this to be accurate. Roy is the antagonist in the series. He represents the media, the manipulative and brainwashing institution that tries to shape people, to condition people from a very young age, which is why he is the father to the yellow guy who is always the victim. He is conditioning his son and others like him to fit into a profit-driven society. We see it in all the episodes. They are always conditioned a certain way for profit, to give to the church, to buy into the latest technology, to buy unhealthy food, etc., etc. So who is the protagonist? Red guy. It's obvious, the final episode proves this. He is the only one to exist in the real world. He is the one to unplug the machine, to take back control, to change things. He's meant to represent our generation, right? 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds, most of you watching this video. The younger generation who are just making their way in the world. We've just arrived in this world and we're taking a look around and saying, what the fuck? So what is Don't Hug Me I'm Scared all about? What happened at the very end of the last episode? Well, let's take a look back at the 50s because they are referenced an awful lot with the date, 19th of June, 1955. The show has always been about children's media, right? It's always been about television. It's been a parody of a children's television show. I mean, you'd think television plays a huge role here. Well, the 50s were a huge and crazy time for television in the United Kingdom. The coronation of Queen Elizabeth II in 1953 drew over 20 million Britons to the television screen. And after that, sales for televisions and TV licenses exploded. The public were hooked. But during this period, the BBC held a monopoly over the airwaves. They were the single source for television and news and entertainment. Gene Seaton, professor of media history and the official BBC historian, characterized this as modern propaganda in its British form. Now, whether this be true or not, a monopoly over the media is never a good thing. But in September of 1955, the monopoly ended. The ITA, the Independent Television Authority, later to be known as the ITV, made its very first broadcast. It was the very first independently funded television station. This was their very first broadcast.
Television is here, and television, with its influence over millions of people, we, the viewers, will be the judge. We shall be the choosers, and advertising will be limited in total amount. We shall not witness the spectacle during our favorite symphony of the first violinist pausing to inform us of his favorite brand of cigarettes. Nor indeed will Hamlet interrupt his soliloquy to tell us of the favorite brand of toothpaste ordinarily used in Elsinore. May they give us good television in a world in which television is so immensely powerful.
The creators of the show are comparing that era to our era, the 1900s to the 2000s. The ITA set out to end the monopoly of the BBC. They set out to give the viewers a choice, to give them more control, to relinquish some of the power that the BBC held. Ending this monopoly opened up the floodgates to all sorts of media to be broadcast on television. Today we have a huge variety. But what they're comparing that to today is the internet. That is what we have seen in the past 20 years. We've taken back control of what we watch, of what we consume. If you don't like the media that's out there, go make your own. The public have more control over the content that they consume now more than ever. A hell of a lot more compared back to the 50s when the BBC reigned supreme and there was a monopoly. Compared back to any olden days, there are truly independent sources for information out there. From YouTubers to bloggers to highly regarded figures that are able to express their opinion on a worldwide platform. We've taken back control to a point where even your mailman could have 100,000 subscribers and have an influence on people. And this is what's happened with the transition from the 19th of June to the 20th. We're transitioning from an older generation of brainwashing and manipulative media to a new generation of media. A generation we have control over. Some people have even suggested that the 19 is symbolic of the 1900s and the 20th is symbolic of the 2000s, and I'm inclined to believe that. I think it makes a lot of sense. And I've talked about a few conflicting reasonings behind the 19th of June 1955. There's a lot of different things that go into it, and I think they're all kind of true, and even if they aren't, it doesn't matter because it's a theory. It's what I believe, and this is what I get out of it. You will not get the same thing out of it. You probably won't agree with me on everything, but that's what's so great about the internet. So transitioning from this old period to make sense, the machine at the end of the final episode that controls everything is quite an old machine. There's a tape/film reader on it. It's obviously outdated. The red guy pulls the plug and the characters are brought back into the show. He pretty much resets the media. We transition to the 20th of June. The characters are now their favorite colors from the first episode, symbolic of them being themselves this time around, actually expressing themselves. And the whole color palette is green, going against the ways of the old manipulative Roy-controlled media. And that's what happened in 1955 with the ITA, and that's what's happening now with the internet. Also note that their favorite colors are RGB, red, green, and blue, the colors that typically make up a modern display. Whereas back in the 50s, televisions were black and white. Today, we have more diversity, we have more control, we have more freedom. When the creators held the puppets hostage in their help videos, which were designed to fund the Kickstarter campaign, we can clearly see the date in the bottom right-hand corner, 19th of June 1955. The Kickstarter was fully funded by everyday people, and the show was able to continue on existing. Only on the internet is that able to happen. As we see in the episodes, the puppets were missing. They were missing since 1955. Because back in 1955, they wouldn't be able to exist. They've been missing up until now. By you and I funding the episodes, we brought them back into today, because only today are they actually able to exist. We saved them from a time where they were being oppressed, a time where they couldn't exist. Until today, when we have alternative methods of distribution and alternative streams of media. Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared is about us. It's about freedom and basic liberties. Taking back control from an older generation that used the media to manipulate and brainwash to fit a certain society driven by profit. It's about having our voice heard, and there's still manipulation out there. People are still prone to be brainwashed, but it's a hell of a lot better than it used to be. The notepad at the end of the final episode represents how there is still a danger out there, how there are still people out there that are manipulated, how there is still media out there that's set out to control us and to condition us to think a certain way. And oftentimes they're successful in doing so. But now, today, we have the power to change that more than ever. We have the power to spread information that will save lives and change people's perspectives of the world for the better. The internet, the freedom to express ourselves, and the ability to control the media we consume is so very important, because when one person or institution has a monopoly over something so influential, something so important to our culture, we become slaves to the false information that is given to us. If you don't enjoy the media that's out there, if you feel there's something missing, then today you have the ability to go make your own. Go change it. Go do something about it. YouTube and the internet, it's a platform for everyone. It's a platform we all have access to. It's on demand, and everyone's welcome. Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared is proof of how far we've come, how bright the future can be, given that we continue to ask questions. An entire community, hundreds of thousands, if not more people, have gathered around Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared to ask questions. They demand to know what's going on. They demand explanations. They are the opposite of what the teachers in the show want. They're the opposite of what the notepad would want in a student. They don't want people who ask questions. They want you to follow blindly. We question everything. We took back control. We form our own personal opinions and beliefs that we throw out there on the internet into the mix. We start discussions and debates. And that's what I've always wanted to do on this channel. We are incredibly lucky to have this chance to be able to express ourselves and expose people to our alternative views. Everyone has a view, and to not use that ability is such a shame. I want this channel to be a place of discussion and debate. You're not going to agree with me. I'm maybe not going to agree with you. Being exposed to different opinions is how we improve upon ourselves. You might say something that I wasn't aware of. You might change my opinion and you might cause me to think differently and be a better human being, and vice versa. And that's what's happened with Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. We all have our own ideas, our own theories. We've all been debating and discussing this for years now. Our theories and debates on this open platform have ultimately led us to a conclusion about what the show actually means, what it's all about. Now, let's apply that to the world around us. Let's apply that same effort and critical thinking to life. What is this life? How should we treat one another? What should be valued and what should not? How do we deal with conflict? How do we carry ourselves? How should we go about achieving our goals and ambitions, our individual pleasures, whilst also trying to universally work together to try and attain peace and mutual respect for our fellow human being? This one's on you. Becky, Joe, thank you. We're done. We're done.
Say the words.
It's a wrap.